Can you feel it? That collective groan rippling through the hockey universe? That weary, exhausted sense of, here we go again, that settles over you like a heavy fog? Because right now, the Montreal Canadiens, a franchise crackling with youthful energy and championship aspirations, find themselves wrestling with the same maddening question that's haunted them since last summer. What on earth do we do with Patrick Laine? Is the experiment already dead on arrival? Or are we simply witnessing another frustrating chapter in the never-ending saga of a supremely gifted player who just can't seem to find solid ground beneath his skates? The exhaustion is real, folks, and it's only October. Before we dive into the Laine dilemma, let's establish the context that makes this situation so particularly vexing. The Montreal Canadiens aren't supposed to be dealing with these kinds of headaches right now. They're supposed to be celebrating. This is a franchise that executed one of the most efficient rebuilds in recent NHL memory, a focused, 3-year transformation that's turned a struggling organization into one of the league's most electrifying young teams. Kent Hughes deserves immense credit here. The general manager has displayed a masterful combination of patience and aggression, stockpiling draft capital, and then watching those selections blossom into legitimate NHL talent. Last season's playoff appearance wasn't a fluke, it was validation. Proof that the foundation is solid, that the vision is working, that something genuinely special is being constructed in Montreal. Hughes hasn't been content to simply wait for his young core to develop organically. He's been proactive, strategically adding complementary pieces designed to accelerate the timeline. Some of those moves have been brilliant. And then there's Patrick Laine. When Montreal acquired Laine from Columbus last summer, the hockey world's reaction was complicated. On one hand, you're getting a player with one of the most lethal shots in the entire league. A pure sniper who can alter momentum with a single flick of his wrists. A former second overall pick whose offensive ceiling is legitimately elite. When Laine is dialed in, when everything's clicking, he's absolutely mesmerizing to watch. On the other hand, there's the track record, the inconsistency, the constant movement between organizations, the persistent inability to find a permanent home where his immense talent can flourish without the accompanying drama and disappointment. Laine's career has been a bewildering odyssey. Dazzling peaks followed immediately by perplexing valleys, stretches of brilliance interrupted by long periods of invisibility. It's the kind of pattern that makes general managers nervous, that keeps coaches up at night wondering how to unlock consistency from a player who seems allergic to it. And now, just months into his Montreal tenure, those familiar warning signs are flashing again. The whispers are starting. The trade speculation is building momentum. Enter Caleb Kerna of Heavy Sports, who's just thrown a fascinating proposal into the mix. Send Laine back to Columbus in a straight one-for-one swap for 24-year-old forward Yegor Chinakhov. At first glance, it seems almost too straightforward. But dig beneath the surface, and you'll find a proposal that addresses fundamental questions about identity, system compatibility, and the ruthless pragmatism required to build a legitimate contender. This trade proposal would be a big deal for both teams, Kerna stated, laying out his rationale with surgical precision. The Canadiens add a young winger who plays sound defensively while the Blue Jackets can offer Laine a fresh start to facilitate a bounce-back season. Let's examine what Montreal would be getting. Chinakhov stands 6 feet 1 inch, weighs 203 pounds, and was Columbus's first-round selection, 21st overall, in the 2020 draft. Last season, he posted 15 points in 30 games while demonstrating exactly the kind of two-way reliability that makes Martin St. Louis's system function. He's not flashy. He won't dominate highlight reels. But he brings consistent effort, defensive responsibility, and a developing offensive game that could slot perfectly into Montreal's middle six forward group. He's the kind of player who makes everyone around him better, the connective tissue that holds a lineup together. Columbus, meanwhile, would be betting on redemption. They'd be welcoming back a 6 feet 4 inches, 208-pound forward who recorded 33 points in an injury-shortened 52-game campaign last season. They'd be gambling that familiar surroundings might finally unlock the elite potential that's been tantalizingly close but frustratingly out of reach. The timing of this trade proposal couldn't be more pointed, especially when you consider what just happened in Toronto. Laine is entering the fourth and final year of the four-year, $34.8 million extension he signed with Columbus back in 2022. That's an $8.7 million cap hit, a substantial investment in a player who's yet to consistently deliver on his immense promise. And his season-opening performance? It was a disaster. Wednesday night against the Maple Leafs should have been Laine's opportunity to silence the doubters, to prove his value, to show Montreal exactly what they acquired. Instead, he found himself relegated to the fourth line, logging the second lowest ice time among all Canadiens forwards. The limited minutes were bad enough, but what he did with those minutes was worse. -2 rating, an ill-timed first-period hooking penalty that disrupted momentum, and perhaps most damning for a player whose entire value proposition revolves around his shooting ability, just one shot on goal. One single shot. For a pure sniper earning nearly $9 million, that's not just disappointing, it's alarming. It's the kind of performance that accelerates trade conversations rather than silencing them. Here's the uncomfortable truth that's becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Patrick Laine doesn't fit what Montreal is building. Martin St. Louis has cultivated a specific identity in Montreal, a high-tempo, defensively responsible system that demands complete buy-in from every player. Speed, effort, two-way accountability, these aren't optional characteristics. They're prerequisites for earning ice time. Laine is a specialist, an offensive weapon designed to find soft ice, get his shot off, and light the lamp. There's nothing inherently wrong with that approach. When it works, it's spectacular. But it requires the entire system to accommodate that style. It requires line mates who retrieve pucks, create space, and feed him in his sweet spots. Montreal isn't built that way anymore. They're not going to reconstruct their entire system around one player's strengths, especially when that player hasn't consistently delivered. Chinakhov, by contrast, embodies everything St. Louis values: responsible defensive play, relentless work ethic, the ability to contribute across all three zones. He might not have Laine's offensive ceiling, but he has something potentially more valuable: reliability. Beyond the on-ice fit, there's a compelling financial argument for this trade. Moving Laine's $8.7 million cap hit would provide Kent Hughes with significant flexibility. That's breathing room to make deadline acquisitions, extend emerging young stars, or simply maintain maneuverability for future opportunities. In today's cap-constrained NHL, that flexibility is precious. For Columbus, reacquiring Laine represents a calculated gamble. They're still deep in their rebuild, accumulating assets and developing their core. If Laine rediscovers his elite form, even temporarily, he becomes either a valuable offensive weapon or a trade chip at the deadline for a contending team desperate for scoring. It's a low-risk, high-reward scenario for a team that can afford to take chances. And sometimes, a return to familiar surroundings can reignite a player's passion and performance. So here we are, barely into the season, already having this conversation. Again, the Patrick Laine enigma continues to confound. He possesses every physical tool necessary to dominate at the NHL level: the size, the shot, the offensive instincts. Yet he's consistently struggled to find consistency, to establish a permanent home, to fulfill the enormous potential that made him a second overall selection. Is it coaching? System fit? The psychological weight of expectations? At this point, does it even matter? What matters is that Montreal is building something special, something that demands complete commitment to a specific identity. And if Laine can't or won't adapt to that demanding style, then his future lies elsewhere. The exhaustion comes from watching this same pattern repeat itself across multiple organizations, multiple systems, multiple opportunities. This proposed trade isn't flashy. It won't generate massive headlines or sell jerseys. But it might be exactly the kind of smart, pragmatic decision that separates good teams from championship contenders. recognizing when a talented player simply isn't the right fit, and having the courage to move on. Alright, I need your honest take on this situation, because I'm genuinely curious where people stand. Should Montreal cut their losses now and bring in a player who fits their identity perfectly? Or does Laine deserve more time, more opportunity, more patience to finally figure it out in Montreal? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't hold back. Are you exhausted by the Laine saga? Or do you still believe in the potential? Let's have a real conversation about this, because it's one of the more fascinating dilemmas in the NHL right now. And if this breakdown gave you a fresh perspective on the situation, show some love with a like, and make sure you're subscribed for more in-depth hockey analysis that goes beyond the surface-level hot takes. This is where we dig into what's really happening in the league. Does this exhaustion angle resonate with how you're feeling about the Laine situation?